All right. Well, to Dr. Mahathir, Mohamad, thank you very much for your time today. Let's start by talking about the Perdana Global Peace Foundation and the Kuala Lumpur Foundation to Criminalize War. These are bold organizations and unfortunately quite unique organizations. Where did the idea for these organizations come from?
It just struck us that on the one hand, we consider a person who kills another person as having committed a serious crime, which may merit the most serious punishment. Yet, when we kill 100,000 people or 1,000,000 people, that is not a crime. That is considered as glorious. And the criminal actually is honored, given medals, have his statue put up and things like that. It seems very odd. How can you say that killing one person is a crime, killing 1,000,000 person is not? So that is why we feel that we should bring to the attention of the world that this is incompatible with civilization, modern civilization. And of course, on the other hand, we know that war is a terrible thing. It brutalizes people. In war, people do things which they would never do in peace. And because war is always won by the powerful, it is a grossly unfair way of settling disputes between nations. So with all these things in our minds, we decided that we should regard war as we regard murder, that mass murder, and we should punish those who commit such mass murder. And so came the idea of criminalizing war.
Well, then let's talk specifically about the 9/11 Revisited conference, which we just held. That conference proceeded on the assumption that 9/11 truth is a key step towards the criminalization of war. Perhaps you can talk about that connection for us.
Well, 9/11 is blamed upon the Muslim terrorists. And for some reason or other, they think that these terrorists are organized and directed by Osama bin Laden. And since Osama bin Laden is suspected of being hiding in Afghanistan, they use that as an excuse to attack the whole country. The whole of Afghanistan was attacked because Osama happens to be hiding there. We no longer respect borders. We no longer respect the independence of nation. If we think our quarry is in any country, we think, or rather the big countries feel, that they are justified in going to war against that country in order to, arrest, apprehend the person they were after. Now, if we have that kind of idea, then no country would be safe. Every country, it may not be under their control that some criminals might hide in their country, but they risk being invaded by these powerful countries. If the powerful countries believe that someone is hiding in their country, this is not an acceptable thing for most weak countries, because they are not in full control over such matters, and they face the danger of being invaded by powerful countries, which will result in the killing of their people who are innocent, which will result in the destruction of the whole country. This is again something that is quite uncivilized.
Absolutely. Could I ask if you can move out of, I can see in the mirror there. Also, Niall, for the moment, if you can move out.
Is here okay?
Well, despite the overwhelming evidence disproving the official account of 9/11, unfortunately, still the majority of Americans, at least seem to have trouble coming to terms with that evidence that shows that the official narrative is not the case. Why do you think this is?
Mainly it is because the American people are deprived of a free press, in the sense that the press is able to publish what really happens. But the press seems to be functioning at the direction of their owners. And these owners may have vested interests in hiding facts from the people. Generally, Americans are not very knowledgeable about countries outside of America. And it is very easy to keep them so by denying them access to news. So the average American really does not know what has happened. They believe that they have a good press, a free press, and they accept what is found in their press, in their media, as being the truth. They accept unquestioningly. So that is why we find that they still believe that this was a crime committed by terrorists against the United States.
All right. Well, on that note, speaking of the role that the alternative media then can play in creating a different understanding among Americans and people all over the world, what can you say about the importance of the alternative media in criminalizing war eventually?
Well, at least we have the alternative media now, and we should make full use of the alternative media. It is a very effective thing, this alternative media, because whereas newspapers may be confined to the country, just the country where the paper is published, the alternative media can reach everyone all over the world in a split second. So it is a very powerful media, and it should be made use more fully in order to debunk what is found in the press, controlled press, and also to tell the truth about events.
Well, you spoke of raising awareness about 9/11 among the other governments around the world, about the inconsistencies in the official story. Do you think the current administration in Malaysia would participate in that?
Well, this is an NGO, a non-government. Governments normally are very afraid. They are scared of the big powers who can twist their arms. For example, it's not necessary that they may invade the country. By, say, freezing assets or freezing the bank operations, they can actually stifle trade and impoverish a country. And Malaysia, for example, had the misfortune to have its currency devalued by currency traders. Suddenly, we became very poor. So there are lots of things which can be manipulated by the powerful countries if they want to force governments to submit. And governments normally submit. But of course, fortunately, we nowadays have NGOs, and NGOs feel much more free. Although, of course, they still risk action being taken against their governments.
On that note, have you had any contact with NGOs or other organizations in other Islamic countries that you think might be interested or receptive to this message?
Yes, we have. We have made contact with some NGOs in Islamic countries, including in Turkey. And of course, governments are very afraid, but NGOs are much more willing to listen and to accept what we tell them or what we prove to them. And I think this is the only way to influence government, especially in democratic countries, because if sufficient number of NGOs believe in the truth, it may be possible for them to throw out government through voting during elections.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Now, Malaysia's main opposition leader, Anwar Ibrahim, previously has made statements that he would support Israel's security. Now, in the context of what's presently going on in Gaza, how do you interpret statements like that?
Either he was not thinking clearly, or else he is deliberate in supporting Israel. Because when you say he would support Israel's right to secure itself, what he's saying is that Israel has a right to invade countries, to build walls, to obstruct justice, to kill aid workers, to invade Gaza, control Gaza, apply blockades against Gaza. And as we have seen exposed at this conference, the killings carried out by the Israeli army. They kill people in Shatila, for example, more than 2,500 people. And in many other places, like in Gaza, in 06, they kill about 1,000 over people, and now they're doing it again. So that is what Israel means by securing itself. And if he supports Israel's right to secure itself, he is supporting what Israel is doing, killing people, killing Palestinians, occupying their land, building settlements, erecting walls, and going to war. That is what he's supporting.
Indeed. Under the current Israeli administration, Jewish settlements have been expanded illegally at unprecedented rates. And recently, Israel's transportation minister, Israel Katz, has called for Gaza to be bombed so hard that Palestinians are forced to move into Egypt. In this climate of hostility, how do you, what is the potential, what possible solution can you find to this conflict? Can you propose anything?
There is no immediate solution. I believe that if we can influence enough people in America and in Europe to go against governments which carry out genocide, then we may see installed as governments people who are much more rational, much more humane, who would like to see justice done to the Palestinians. It is a long-drawn fight, but after all, it's been there for now over 60 years. We will have to continue this, even if it lasts us 100 years or 200 years.
In recent times, many Israelis have protested against the apartheid policies of the regime there. What are your thoughts on these kinds of Israeli activists who are seeking a peaceful resolution to the conflict?
We need to work with them. We need to encourage them, because they can be very influential. They can be, they are in a position to do very positive things about changing their policies, about changing their governments.
Many independent researchers have pointed out how U.S. groups and pro-Israeli groups have supported opposition movements in places where the Arab Spring took place, in a sense cultivated the kind of unrest that took place there. Do you think similar things could be happening in Malaysia?
Well, there is already an attempt. For example, the opposition is actually receiving money from NGOs which are financed by the U.S. government. So apparently they would like to see a regime change in Malaysia. And they have in mind someone who is known to be very pro-American and has seen the Israeli action as right, because it is in defense of Israel.
And just sort of to conclude, what are your thoughts on Malaysia's participation in the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement?
I am very much against it, because I have a very simple way of thinking that if any proposal comes from any country, it must be in the interest of that country. Now, this proposal has come from the United States. It cannot be for the good of other people. It must be for the good of the United States. And for that reason, we should examine it very carefully before acceding to it.
The current government here in Malaysia has incrementally began to inch closer to the United States in diplomatic and economic affairs. So, were your statements on that?
Well, I think the current government is not as strong as it used to be. It has very simple majority. It fears its members crossing over. So it has to be extremely careful.
And Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, thank you very much for speaking with us.
You're welcome.
Can I have one more question? Sorry. Thank you. Actually, I wanted to ask about the Gaza Emergency Fund that you just established with the Perdana Global Peace Foundation. Can you tell us about the fund and what you hope to accomplish with it?
Well, we would like to collect as much money as possible to finance aid for Gaza, but we don't have a proper network to distribute the aid. Although in the past we have sent ships and we have sent people to bring aid material, medicine and food, etc. to Gaza, but there are other organizations with similar aim. We would be willing to help them with some of the funds.
And if you had a message to the people of the world about the importance of donating to Gaza, what would that message be?
Well, I think we should care for people who are in distress, because we never know when we would be in a similar situation, either naturally through some natural catastrophe, or it may be because some big powers might attack us and we'll be distressed, and at that stage we need help from others. So before we ever get into that situation, we should think about other people, so that when we are in that situation, maybe people will think about us.
All right, Dr. Mohamad, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.